Amara se tenait devant le miroir dans sa nouvelle chambre, ajustant soigneusement son uniforme scolaire. Elle soupire doucement en examinant son reflet. Ses cheveux noirs soigneusement rentrés dans des nattes, ses yeux bruns regardant avec une légère inquiétude. La fille était petite et fragile, mais son regard reflétait une force qu'elle n'avait peut-être pas encore réalisée. Déménager d'une petite ville africaine d'Amérique a été un grand papa pour Amara et sa famille. Ses parents pensaient que cela lui donnerait un avenir et le milieu dont eux-mêmes ne pouvaient que rêver. Mais curieusement, c'est cette opportunité qui est devenue la source de sa misère. Et l'Amérique ne l'a pas rencontrée comme elle s'y attendait. Dans son esprit, ce pays était une terre d'opportunités où les gens étaient amicaux et ouverts. Mais la réalité est beaucoup plus dure. Une nouvelle école, une nouvelle langue, de nouveaux visages, tout cela semblait intimidant et étranger. Amara se souvenait de ses premiers pas dans les couloirs de l'école. Les hautes morses, la lumière vive des lampes, le bruit des voix venant de partout. Son cœur battait plus vite à chaque passe. Dans les yeux de ses camarades de classe, elle voyait de la curiosité, mais le plus souvent une froide indifférence. Le premier jour de classe, elle a essayé de rester dans l'ombre pour éviter une attention particulière. Mais ce n'était pas si facile. Dès que l'enseignante appelle son nom, la classe éclate dans une agitation.
Amara? Quel nom étrange!
Murmura une fille assise à ses côtés d'elle.
Elle n'est certainement pas d'ici.
Ajoute à quelqu'un d'autre, et Amara sentit un frisson lui traverser la colonne vertébrale. Les jaunes du colon étaient un véritable défi pour elle. Elle essaya d'ignorer les chuchotements dans son dos, les regards obliqués, les sourires et des dédains. Mais c'était difficile. Chaque matin, elle se réveillait avec un sentiment d'anxiété et de réticence à aller à l'école, au nom pas des amis et de nouvelles connaissances, mais l'humiliation et la solitude l'attendaient. En classe, Amara essaye de s'asseoir dans les rangées du fond pour ne pas attirer l'attention. Son anglais n'était pas mauvais, mais son accent et son incertitude dans les mots devenaient souvent motif de ridicule. Un jour en cours d'histoire, le professeur lui a demandé d'où elle venait. Amara répondit modestement: « Je viens d'Afrique. » La classe a éclaté de rire.
« Et l'Afrique ? Tu t'es échappé de la jungle »
a crié un garçon du fond de la classe, et tout le monde a ri. Amara sentit ses yeux rougir d'honte. Elle voulait répondre quelque chose, mais les mots lui restaient dans la gorge. Après le cours, un groupe de filles laissait s'approcher d'elle. Il n'y avait rien d'amical dans leurs regards.
Pourquoi es-tu toujours si calme ?
Elle nez et les a demandé, haussant les sourcils.
Peux-tu même parler ?
Je peux, répondit Amara calmement, essayant de ne pas les regarder dans les yeux.
Je le pensais. Tu es juste gênée par ton accent bizarre,
dit l'autre fille en croisant les bras sur sa poitrine. Amara ne savait pas quoi dire. Elle s'est rendue compte que tout utile les mots qu'elle désirait utiliser contre elle. Alors elle est restée silencieuse, attendant que les filles partent. Et ils sont partis, laissant derrière ou leur sentiment de ressentiment. À la maison, Amara parlait rarement de ce qui se passait à l'école. Ses parents étaient occupés à travailler, essayant de subvenir aux besoins de la famille. Ils espéraient que leur fille s'adapterait rapidement à sa nouvelle vie et se ferait des amis. Mais Amara ne voulait pas les contrarier, alors elle a gardé le silence sur ses inquiétudes. Un jour cependant, tout change. En classe d'anglais, l'enseignante a confié à ses élèves la tâche d'écrire un essai sur leur pays d'origine. Amara a longuement réfléchi à la meilleure façon d'aborder cette mission. Son pays d'origine n'était pas seulement un endroit sur la carte. C'était la maison où elle a passé son enfance, où elle connaissait chaque chemin, chaque arbre. Mais comment dire ça à des gens qui ne savent même pas où se trouve son pays? En fin de compte, elle a décidé d'écrire avec le cœur. Elle a décrit les forêts verdoyantes, les larges rivières, le sable chaud sous ses pieds. Elle a écrit sur la façon dont elle a aimé, et s'asseoir sous un énorme baobab, et écouter le chant du vin. Elle a écrit sur son peuple, sur les traditions transmises de génération en génération. Au moment de lire l'essai à haute voix, Amara sentit son cœur battre fort. Elle savait que ses camarades de classe riraient rien, au pire, ils ignoreraient simplement son histoire. Mais quand elle a commencé à lire, il y avait un silence dans la classe. Sa voix tremblait, mais à chaque ligne, elle se sentait de plus en plus confiante. Après ce qu'elle eut fini de lire, il y eut une pause. Et l'enseignant fut le premier à rompre le silence.
Si était merveilleux, Amara.
Dit-elle avec un sourire.
Tu nous as vraiment montré une autre facette du monde.
Mais la réaction de ses camarades de classe était mitigée. Certains applaudissaient, certains regardaient en silence, et certains se détournaient simplement. Amara remarqua cependant qu'il n'y avait plus cette froidure moqueuse dans leurs yeux. Elle a vu de l'intérêt, bien que faible. Mais de l'intérêt quand même. Après les courses, plusieurs étudiants l'ont approchée.
Es-tu vraiment de la base? Est-ce que tout est vrai?
Elles ont dit, a demandé, la regardant curieusement.
Oui. Si, est-ce vrai?
Hocha la tête Amara, heureuse que quelqu'un veuille en savoir plus.
Étais-tu vraiment assis sous un baobab?
La fille aux faux cheveux blonds a demandé. Oui. Confirma encore Amara souriante.
Que?
Répondit brièvement la fille et partit, mais elle fit un sourire chaleureux à Amara en lui disant « Au revoir ». Ce jour était le premier pas d'Amara pour faire partie d'un nouveau monde. Elle s'est rendue compte que si elle était fière de ses origines, et n'avait pas peur d'y en parler, elle pourrait trouver un terrain d'identité avec les autres. Mais elle avait encore de nombreux obstacles à surmonter pour s'accepter et se faire des amis. Bientôt, Amara commence à remarquer que ses camarades de classe commençaient à la traiter un peu différemment. Ils ont arrêté de shooter dans son dos et ont même commencé à lui poser des questions sur son pays. Amara leur répondit avec plaisir, sentant la glace commencer lentement à fondre. Mais tout le monde ne partageait pas son nouvel intérêt pour elle. Certains enfants considéraient toujours comme une étrangère et continuaient à rester à l'écart Elle. Mais Amara n'était plus si inquiète à ce sujet. Elle a commencé à trouver une force intérieure et une confiance qui l'ont aidée à faire face aux difficultés. Un jour de récréation, une fille nommée Sarah, qui était l'une de ses agresseurs, s'est approchée d'Amara.
Salut, Amara.
Commença-t-il elle avec hésitation.
Pourriez-vous m'aider avec mes devoirs d'histoire? J'ai vu à quel point tu as bien réussi ton essai. Tu dois en savoir beaucoup.
Amara fut surprise, puis hocha la tête. Amara, bien sûr que je vais aider, répondit-elle, ressentant une agréable chaleur à l'intérieur. Elle était heureuse que quelqu'un lui ait enfin demandé de l'aider. Ils se sont assis au même bureau et Amara commence à expliquer le matériel à Sarah. Elle essaya de parler lentement et clairement pour que la fille comprenne tout. En discutant, Amara a remarqué que Sarah était devenue plus détendue et a même commencé à sourire.
Merci. Tu es vraiment douée pour expliquer les choses.
A déclaré Sarah à la fille.
Je suis contente d'y avoir pu aider.
Répondit Amara lorsqu'elle sentait son cœur se sentir plus léger. À partir de ce jour, leur communication a commencé à se développer. Sarah était la première à vraiment commencer à s'intéresser à Amara en tant que personne, et non en tant que nouvelle venue, étrange. Peu à peu, ils ont commencé à passer plus de temps ensemble, et Amara commence à croire qu'elle pouvait se faire des amis dans cette école. Cependant, Amara avait toujours l'impression de ne pas s'intégrer parfaitement à sa nouvelle vie. Sa maison, ses visages familiers et ses habitudes lui incroyantes. Mais chaque jour, elle apprenait quelque chose de nouveau, devenant plus forte et plus confiante. Elle a commencé à se rendre compte que peu importe ce que les autres pensaient et disaient, elle resterait toujours, elle-même, une fille d'Afrique venue au monde avec une mission spéciale. Bien que son voyage ne faisait que commencer, Amara était prête à relever tous les défis. Chaque jour d'école était un défi pour Amara. Dès qu'elle a franchi le seuil de la salle de classe, elle a ressenti une anxiété qui augmentait à chaque passe. Elle était toujours accueillie par un flot de chuchotements et de regards qu'elle ne pouvait échapper. Il lui semblait que les monstres de l'école se rétrécissaient chaque jour, comme mais ils voulaient l'écraser sous le poids de l'incompréhension et de la cruauté des autres. À première vue, tout a commencé de manière inoffensive. Quelques commentaires moqueurs sur ses vêtements, quelques blagues sur son accent. Mais cela a rapidement dégénéré en un véritable incident d'intimidation. Et l'une des garçons Jason qui semblait toujours à la recherche d'une victime, a commencé à intimider Amara en classe.
Dis quelque chose en anglais, Amara.
Dit-il avec un sourire narquois, faisant une grimace qui ressemblait à son accent.
N'oubliez pas d'y ajouter vos sons intéressants.
La classe est à éclat de rire. Et Amara essaye de ne pas montrer à quel point ça faisait mal. Elle baissa la tête et se concentra sur ses cahiers, sentant son visage rougir.
Pourquoi parles-tu si bizarrement de tous tes féconds?
À la récréation, elle hymna des filles, Lisa. Elle s'approcha d'elle, la scrutante.
Tu ne sais pas prononcer les mots?
Moi de j'essaie. Elle répondit Amara calmement, essayant de ne pas croiser le regard de Lisa.
Peut-être que tu devrais essayer un peu plus forte.
Ses 15 words sounded like a sentence. Amara felt her world, her confidence crumbling. Every morning it became harder and harder for her to find the strength to go to school. She tried to do everything as quietly as possible, as inconspicuously as possible, so as not to draw attention to herself, but it didn't help. The bullying became more and more sophisticated and violent. At lunch, Amara was often alone. No one wanted to sit next to her. Sometimes she would try to approach her table, but they would immediately pretend not to notice her. Sorry, it's taken, someone would quickly say as she tried to find a seat. It was the standard response she had almost every day. Her small, cozy home, where she always smelled her mother's favorite spices and heard her father's soft voice, seemed more and more distant and out of reach. Even in her own room, Amara could not shake the feeling of loneliness and unwantedness. At times she wondered if it had been worth it to move to this country at all. One day, as Amara was walking home from school with slumped shoulders, her mother stopped her. "Honey, is something wrong? You've been so quiet," she asked worriedly, noticing her daughter's condition. Amara hesitated, not knowing how to explain her feelings. How to tell her that every day at school she felt like a stranger, that she was haunted by this constant fear and pain. "It's okay, Mom," just how she replied with a strained smile, hoping her mother wouldn't ask more questions. But her mother never gave up trying to find out what was going on. "If something is bothering you, you can tell me, Amara. I'm always here for you," she added softly. "I know," Amara whispered, averting her eyes so she couldn't see the worry reflected in them. "But he's really okay." Her mom knew something was wrong with her daughter, but decided to give her time. She remembered how hard it had been for herself to adjust to a new life, a new world. She hoped Amara would be able to cope as she had. Meanwhile, things were getting worse at school. Even the teachers didn't seem to notice what was going on. Sometimes Amara caught their sympathetic glances, but none of them intervened. Perhaps they thought it was just childish banter that would pass quickly. But for Amara it was so much more than that. One day at recess, when Amara was trying to walk down the hallway unnoticed, she was stopped by Jason and his buddies. They surrounded her, blocking her way. "Where are you going, jungle princess?" he asked sarcastically, nudging her with his shoulder. "Leave me alone," Amara said quietly, trying to be strong, but her voice was shaking. "Oh look," she decided to talk. "Love Caitlin," who came up on the other side of them. "And what are you going to tell us, Amara? Why don't you tell us how you hunt lions in your Africa?" "Yes, or how you run from elephants?" Jason backed her up, and everyone laughed even louder. Amara tried to leave, but they wouldn't let her. Despair swept over her and tears came to her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "See? Please? Is that all you can say?" Jason leaned closer, looking her straight in the eye. "We just want to have fun, Amara. Don't you want to have fun with us?" At that moment, one of the teachers appeared in the hallway, and the group dispersed instantly. Amara was left alone, feeling the ground go from under her feet. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer and ran outside, hiding around the corner of the school. She didn't know how long she sat there, sobbing and feeling completely alone. It seemed to her that the whole world had turned its back on her. Was she really so different that she deserved all this? But there was a growing feeling inside her that she shouldn't give up. Amara realized that if she didn't stand up for herself, she would remain a target. But could she do? How could she do? How could she stand up to an entire class when even the teachers remained indifferent? The next day, Amara came to school with a new solution. She didn't know if it would help, but she knew one thing: she wouldn't be silent anymore. Her heart beat faster than usual when she entered the classroom, but she was ready for what lay ahead. "Hi, Amara," Jason said mockingly as soon as she walked in. Ready for a new day? Yes, she answered confidently, trying not to show fear. And if you think you can break me, you're wrong. The class froze. No one had expected Amara to answer like that. Jason grinned, but there was a look of surprise on his face. Really? He asked again, but his voice was no longer as confident as before. Yes, Amara repeated, not looking away. And if any of you think you can intimidate me, let them try again. She knew she was only at the beginning of this fight, but she could already feel the fire inside her. A fire that wouldn't let her give up. 3. Mystery of origin. As a child, Amara never gave much thought to the fact that her life was different from other children. Her world was a small village in the center of the African kingdom of Mwanzi, where she grew up surrounded by the love of her parents and the kindness of the people who surrounded her. Her parents, King Ketumba and Queen Naomi, did not live in a lavish palace as one might expect. Their home, though more imposing than the others in the village, remained simple and cozy. Amara thought of her life as ordinary, full of the joys and adventures any child might have. However, beneath this seemingly simple existence lurked a great mystery. Amara was the sole heir to the throne of the kingdom of Mwanzi, and her parents knew that one day she would have to ascend the throne and rule the land. But they also realized that in order to be a good ruler, she would have to go through trials that would strengthen her spirit and help her understand the true meaning of leadership. Amara's parents made the difficult decision to send their daughter to a distant country to get an education and experience life outside the palace. They wanted Amara to learn how other people live, face challenges and learn how to overcome them. They knew she would have to go through pain, loneliness and possibly injustice, but believed it would make her stronger. Moving to America was the first step in this difficult journey. King Ketumba and Queen Naomi tried not to show their daughter how hard it was for them to let her go, but they knew it was necessary. On the day of departure, they hugged Amara for a long time, giving her warm words of encouragement. Amara said her father, holding her hands, "Remember that we are always with you, even when we are not with you. You have a strength in you that no one else has, and one day you will realize what that means. You are special, my dear mom added, stroking her cheek. Never forget who you are and what you have inside you, the strength and wisdom that will help you overcome all challenges." Amara didn't fully understand what her parents were saying, but she knew she had to be strong for their sake. Moving to a new country seemed like an exciting adventure, and she believed she could handle any challenges. However, the reality was much more difficult than she had anticipated. In America, Amara immediately faced misunderstanding and dislike. Her accent, appearance, and habits all made her stand out among her peers, and not for the better. Amara quickly realized that the world outside of her home kingdom was not at all as welcoming as she had thought. As the weeks passed, Amara became more and more withdrawn. She didn't want to bother her parents with her problems, so she never told them how she was teased at school or how hard each day was for her. But she knew her parents felt her pain, even though they were far away from her. One night, while Amara was on a video call with her parents, her mom noticed something new in her daughter's eyes, a tiredness and sadness that wasn't there before. "Amarani, how are you?" Queen Naomi asked, trying to catch something in her answer that wasn't being said out loud. "I'm fine," Mom Amara replied with a strange smile. "I'm just tired after school." "We know this isn't easy for you," King Ketumba said softly. "But remember that these trials will help you grow stronger. We are always here for you," Naomi added. "Even if you don't feel it." Amara nodded, trying to hide her tears. She didn't want her parents to worry, but a storm was brewing inside her. She felt like she was losing herself, that it was getting harder every day to remember who she really was. Her heart ached with loneliness and resentment, and she didn't know how to deal with it. However, the mystery of her origins soon began to surface. In one of her geography classes, the teacher was talking about the countries of Africa. He mentioned the kingdom of Mwanzi, and Amara froze when she heard the familiar name. Mwanzi is a small kingdom located in Central Africa, the Tesha began. It is a country rich in history and culture. The ruling dynasty is descended from ancient chiefs. And the country is now ruled by King Ketumba and his Queen Naomi. They take great care of their people and try to keep the traditions of their ancestors alive. Amara felt her heart begin to beat faster. Her home kingdom, her parents, it was all suddenly a reality in this distant classroom. But she knew she couldn't reveal her secret. If her classmates found out she was a princess, it would only make things worse. She was already teased for being different, and if they found out the truth, their taunts would become even more cruel. That day, Amara realized that her mission was much more complicated than she had ever imagined. She not only had to survive in the new world, but also to preserve her true identity, to stay true to herself and her family. Her parents, despite all their love, could not protect her from the trials that lay ahead. But they believed in her, and that gave her the strength to go on. Shortly after class, Amara spoke to her parents again. She felt she had to ask them a question that had been plaguing her for a long time. "Dad, Mom," she began, trying to hide the excitement in her voice, "why did you send me here? Why can't he go home?" Her parents looked at each other. There was a shadow of sadness on their faces, but also a realization that this moment had to come. Amara Naomi began softly, "We didn't send you here because we wanted you to suffer. We did it because we know that one day you will be a ruler. And to be a good ruler, you need to understand the world that people live in. You need to know how to overcome difficulties, how to be strong when everything seems to be against you. We want you to be the kind of ruler who not only knows how to run a country, but also understands how to live, how to fight and how to win a tomba at it. You must go through these trials to understand what true power is." Amara listened to their words in silence, feeling the weight of responsibility weighing on her shoulders. She knew her parents were right, but that didn't make it any easier. She was just a girl, and it was hard for her to handle what was required of her. But after talking to her parents, a new strength began to dawn in Amara's soul. She realized that her path was not only a path of suffering, but also a path of growth. She began to see her trials not as punishment, but as an opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more prepared for what lay ahead. Amara decided that she would be resilient. She would accept the challenge of fate and become the person her parents saw her as: a wise, strong, and fair ruler. Though her secret remained unsolved to everyone around her, Amara knew that her heart would always belong to the kingdom of Mwanzi, and one day she would return there to fulfill her destiny. Full of emotional stress and struggle. With each passing day, school life became more and more difficult for Amara. The constant ridicule and humiliation accumulated like a heavy weight that she carried with her everywhere she went. She was in pain, but she tried not to show it to anyone, not even her parents. Their care and love kept her going, but Amara felt her strength waning. Her classmates continued to pick on her accent, appearance, and oddities, as they called it. They made fun of her traditional clothes, which she sometimes wore on holidays, and the way she pronounced words as if she were juggling sounds. Jason and his company never missed a single opportunity to jab her with a word or gesture. Even when the teachers tried to intervene, it made little difference. Amara was still an outcast. Her only consolation was her studies. Immersed in her textbooks, Amara could forget what was going on around for a while. She diligently did her homework, worked on projects, and, despite the pressure from her classmates, achieved high results. Her successes did not go unnoticed, but it did not bring her much joy, because every time she got a good grade, she was only hated more. In addition to her studies, Amara found comfort in her cultural traditions. She often recalled her mother's stories about her native country, its rich culture, and ancient customs. In the evenings, she would sit at the table and read books about Mwanzi that she had brought with her from Africa. She found something familiar and native in these pages that helped her to stay connected to the world she had grown up in. Sometimes, when no one was around, Amara would pull out the traditional jewelry and costumes that her mother had neatly stacked in her suitcase before she left. She put them on and looked at herself in the mirror, trying to see the princess her mother had spoken of. But it seemed to her that the reflection did not match the image she had envisioned. She found it hard to believe that she was the princess, the heir to the kingdom her parents had told her about. At times, Amara began to question her past. Why had her parents never told her directly about her status? Why did they choose to send her to America? What did it mean to be a princess if you had to live so far away from your country, among people who didn't understand you? Amara asked one day as they sat together in the kitchen, "Why did we leave Mwanzi? Why can't he go back home?" Her mother looked at her sadly but answered calmly, "We wanted you to get a better education, Amara. To see the world and learn many things that will be useful to you in the future. You must realize that you have a special destiny." "But why can't he find out now?" Amara didn't stop. "I feel like I'm not being told something." Her mother hugged her gently and whispered, "It's too early for you to know the whole truth there. But when the time comes, you'll know everything. Just be patient and believe in yourself." These words calmed Amara little, but did not dispel her doubts. It seemed to her that her future was hidden behind a curtain that she could not lift. Still, she decided to trust her mother and father, believing that they were leading her on the right path. 5. A turning point at a school party. An important day in the life of the school was approaching International Day. Every year the school held this party to celebrate the diversity of cultures represented in their small community. The students were asked to prepare presentations about their countries, and Amara, despite her fears, decided to participate. The idea of speaking in front of the class scared her, but she realized that this was her chance to show others that she was not just a girl from a faraway country. She decided to talk about the culture and traditions of Mwanzi, its ancient history, and the people who cherish their customs. Amara spent hours preparing for the presentation, gathering materials and remembering her parents' stories. When the day of the feast came, Amara wore her best traditional dress, a brightly colored beaded dress. Her hair was braided into neat pigtails, and around her neck she wore a necklace that had been passed down in her family for generations. On this day she felt closer to home than ever before. There was a festive atmosphere in the hall. Flags of different countries were hanging everywhere, national dishes were on the table. The students spoke one by one about their cultures, and then it was Amara's turn. She stood in front of the class, her heart was racing, but she gathered her courage and began to speak. My home country is Mwanzi, she began, trying to keep her voice from shaking. It is a small kingdom in the center of Africa, where culture and tradition play an important role in people's lives. Amara talked about the rich history of her country, the beauty of its nature, and the friendliness of its people. She showed pictures she had brought from home and shared stories she had heard from her parents. Her words gradually began to attract the attention of those who usually ignored her. But at one point, someone in the audience raised a hand, and Amara froze. "You said it was a kingdom?" Jason asked, frowning his eyebrows. "So you have a king and queen?" Amara nodded, feeling the tension in the room rise. "Yes, we have a king and queen," she replied. "And they take great care of their people. Who are they? Do you know them?" Jason continued with more interest. Amara hesitated. She knew that now was the moment when her secret might come out. She looked at the class, at the interested faces of her classmates, and felt her resolve growing inside her. "King and Queen Mwanzi are my parents," she said calmly. "I am their daughter, and one day I will have to carry on their work." There was silence in the hall. Everyone looked at Amara with surprise and even disbelief. She saw their eyes widen with surprise, and felt something warm in her chest. It was pride in her family, in her country. "So you're a princess?" Saiklin asked slowly, who was always among those who teased her. Amara nodded, feeling her heart pounding in unison with every word she said. "Yes," she replied. "I am Princess Mwanzi. But I'm not here to stand out. I want you to know my country, my culture, and realize that behind the differences, we are all the same." Amara's words sounded sincere and deep. She didn't expect this confession to change everything, but she realized that this moment was a turning point in her life. She could no longer hide her true identity, but that no longer scared her. Amara was ready to accept her destiny and go forward, despite all the difficulties that might come her way. The audience was silent for a long time, digesting what they had heard. Then there was applause, not timid and polite, but sincere and full of respect. Amara felt the weight she had been carrying for so long begin to fall from her shoulders. She stood in front of everyone with her head proudly up, knowing that she would no longer hide it. She had accepted herself and her destiny, and was now ready to move forward. 6. Change in the attitudes of those around her. After Amara revealed the truth about her origins at a school party, life around her began to change. That day was a turning point that opened new doors for her, but also brought unexpected consequences. The first day after a holiday, when Amara walked into school, she immediately noticed a change in the way her classmates treated her. Everyone around her began to look at her differently. Those who used to tease her now suddenly started showing her attention. Some even tried to make friends with her. Jessica, one of the girls who had always supported Jason's stance, approached Amara at her locker as she was laying out her books. "Hi, Amara," she began uncertainly. "I wanted to say, you were very brave at the party. I didn't realize you had such an interesting story. It must be cool to be a princess." Amara looked at Jessica, trying to understand her sincerity. This girl had never shown any interest in her life before, and now all of a sudden she was saying such words. Amara sensed that there was more than admiration behind those words. "Thank you, Jessica," Amara replied calmly. "But princess or not, I'm still the same person I was before." Yes, of course, Jessica nodded quickly, visibly embarrassed. "I just wanted to say that. Well, I'm sorry if I've ever been unfair to you." The words came out of the blue, but Amara nodded, accepting them gratefully. "It's okay," she replied softly. "I guess everyone makes mistakes sometimes." Not all of her classmates were so kindly disposed, however. Jason, who had been the leader of the group that constantly bullied Amara, was now clearly feeling out of place. He avoided her gaze, and although Enono made barbed remarks, there was a noticeable envy and ill will in his demeanor. One day at recess, as Amara headed for the cafeteria, Jason and his friends blocked her path. Tension hung in the air, and Amara prepared for them to start teasing her again. But instead, Jason said with a wry smile, "So, princess, how's your throne? Is it comfortable?" Amara felt a wave of unpleasantness rising inside her. But instead of giving in to her emotions, she took a deep breath and replied with restraint. "Jason, if you think a title makes me special, you're wrong. Being a princess is not a privilege, it's a responsibility. And I'm not going to boast about it in front of people who don't realize what's really important." Those words clearly threw Jason off balance. He'd expected to see fear or resentment, but instead he was met with confidence and calm. He hummed, answered nothing, and turned away, walking away with his friends who were still looking at Amara with disbelief. However, there were some who had actually changed their opinion of her. Caitlin, one of the most popular girls in the school, had always shown an interest in culture and art. She approached Amara after school and suggested that they do a project together on African history, knowing that Amara would have something special to contribute. Amara Caitlin began as they sat in the library working on the project. "I really want to learn more about your country. I never realized that Africa had such rich cultures and histories. Why didn't you tell me about it before?" Amara smiled as she looked at Caitlin. "I tried," she admitted, "but sometimes it's easier for people to judge others without trying to understand them. I'm glad I have the opportunity to tell you and others what's important to me." Each day, Amara was drawn to Amara more and more by the boys who wanted to get to know her better. They began to wonder what it meant to be a princess in today's world, and what it was like to carry such a responsibility on their shoulders. Some started asking her questions about Mwanzi, her family, and how she saw her future. One of those kids was Thomas, a quiet and withdrawn boy who never participated in Amara's dance, but never tried to support her either. One day he approached her at recess and hesitantly asked, "Amara, can I ask you a question? Aren't you afraid of being so special?" Amara was surprised by his question, but answered sincerely. "Being special isn't always easy, Thomas. But I've realized that it's not how others see you, but how you see yourself that matters. If you know who you are and what you can give to the world, then all fears become less of a big deal." Thomas nodded, thinking about her words. "You're right," he said, smiling. "Thank you, Amara." But despite the displays of friendship and respect from her classmates, Amara couldn't help but notice that some of them still didn't accept her. Envy and resentment still hung in the air, and Amara realized that she would have to live with it. However, instead of feeling sad about it, Amara decided to use her new popularity and respect to unite her classmates. She began suggesting ideas for new projects, inviting the boys to participate in various school events related to culture and art. At one of these events, dedicated to African music and dance, Amara proposed to organize a workshop where she would teach her classmates the dances of her people. Many agreed, and that afternoon the school hall was filled with the sounds of drums and cheerful voices. Amara felt her soul fill with joy as she saw her classmates' interest and respect for her culture. She realized that she had been able to achieve what she had wanted for so long: acceptance and understanding. But along with that came the realization that she herself had changed. Before, Amara had been afraid to stand out, afraid to be different. Now she realized that her uniqueness was her strength. Even though some people still didn't understand or accept her, she no longer felt alone. She had friends who saw her not just as a princess, but as someone to share joy with and support in times of need. Nevertheless, Amara knew that new challenges lay ahead of her. But now she was ready to face them with confidence and faith in herself. She knew that her journey was just beginning, and that there was a lot of work ahead. But with each step she grew stronger and wiser, ready for whatever the future had in store for her. 7. Amara's personal growth. After her secret was revealed and her classmates' attitudes towards her changed, Amara began to realize that new opportunities had opened up before her. However, along with this she realized that being a princess was not just a privilege, but a great responsibility. Each day she became more and more convinced that her power was not in her title, but in how she used that status to benefit those around her. Inspired by her new position, Amara decided to focus on helping other kids who, like her, were facing bullying. Her own experiences made her more sensitive to the suffering of those who felt isolated and humiliated. She began to notice those who, like herself, once sat alone at recess or tried to avoid extra attention. One of Amara's first steps was to start a support group for children who are having trouble connecting with their classmates. She approached the school psychologist with a proposal to organize weekly meetings where kids could share their problems and get help. The school psychologist supported the idea, and soon the group began its work. At the first meetings, Amara saw how difficult it was for some of the children to open up, how hard it was for them to talk about their worries. But her own story became a source of inspiration for many. She told how she herself had gone through pain and humiliation, how she had long searched for the strength to cope with the situation. I was afraid too, Amara said at one of the meetings. I felt that no one understood me. But then I realized that if I could deal with it, I could help others. It's important not to hide your fears, but to share them. Together we are stronger. These words gradually began to penetrate the children's hearts, and the support group became a place where they could be themselves. They began to open up and share their stories. And Amara was happy to see how they began to change, to become more confident and stronger. However, her work was not just limited to the support group. Amara realized that her influence could extend beyond the school. She began to organize various activities aimed at combating bullying. One such activity was the Strength in Unity week, where students participated in discussions, workshops and interactive sessions aimed at developing empathy and understanding. Remember, I said during one of these sessions, each of us is unique, and that makes us strong. But only when we learn to understand each other can we truly reach our potential. We need to support each other, not demean each other. As time went on, Amara began to notice the atmosphere in the school changing. More and more students began to listen to her words, and the level of aggression and ridicule began to decrease. Even those who had previously been oblivious to the problems of others began to think about how their actions might affect those around them. At the same time, Amara began to realize that her strength was not in being a princess, but in her ability to inspire and help others. The title became a means for her to achieve more rather than an end. She realized that true greatness lies not in status, but in how one uses one's abilities to make the world a better place. One day, after another cheerleading meeting, Amara was approached by Lily, a junior high girl who had been ridiculed many times before because of her shyness. Lily began timidly, "I want to say thank you. Before I was always afraid that I wouldn't be accepted, but now I know that I have friends and that I can be myself." These words touched Amara deeply. She realized that her efforts had not been in vain, that she had indeed been able to change someone's life. She smiled at Lily and replied, "You are strong, Lily. And you should never be afraid to be you. It's important to remember that we are valued for who we are, not what others want us to be." Each day, Amara grew stronger in her convictions. Her inner dignity grew, and she no longer doubted her abilities. She now knew that her path was a path of serving others, helping those in need. She also began to focus more on her education. Amara realized that knowledge was a power that could help her in her future role as a princess. She began studying political science, international relations, and human rights, dreaming of the day when she could put her knowledge into practice to make the world a better place. Amara's family supported her in every endeavor. Her parents were proud of the way she used her abilities and saw that their daughter had found her calling. Amara, her father, said to her one day as they were walking in the park, "You've become a real princess. Not because you have a title, but because you have found your place in the world. You know that your strength is in your deeds, not in your titles." These words were memorable to Amara. She realized that her life had a new meaning. She now saw her goal as using her knowledge, experience and influence to make the world a better place, to help others overcome challenges and become stronger. Amara knew that her journey was just beginning. There were many challenges ahead of her, but she was ready for them. Her inner world had grown stronger, and she knew she could handle any challenge? She was no longer afraid to be herself, for she knew that her strength was in her dignity, her wisdom and her quest for justice. 8. De conclusion, a princess in a new light. With each passing day, Amara grew more and more accustomed to the new role she had to exist in. Finding a balance between her royal duties and the life of an ordinary schoolgirl, she felt that she had finally found inner harmony. Her days were filled with studying, socializing with her classmates, and new projects that helped her use her influence for good. In the school hallway, she no longer felt the hard studies that had accompanied her at first. Now she walked confidently, knowing that she had found her place in the world. Amara continued to participate in school activities, organizing meetings for children facing bullying and sharing her experiences. But the most important step for her was forgiveness. She realized that the underlying resentment was not only weighing on her soul, but also preventing her from moving forward. At some point, Amara decided it was time to let go of the past. One day, as she stood at her locker, Jessica and Jason approached her. Both looked confused but determined. Jessica was the first to break the silence. Amara, I want to apologize again for everything that happened. We were wrong, and I realize that now. Jason, who seemed a little tense, also added, yes, I want to apologize too. We behaved terribly. Amara looked at them and felt her heart fill with warmth. Her kindness and strength of character made her realize that forgiveness was not weakness, but the greatest expression of strength. I forgive you, she said softly. But please remember that what matters is not who we are, but what we choose to be. The words sounded sincere and simple, but they contained all the depths of her inner world. Forgiveness brought her real relief, and she felt the last shadows of the past fade away. Amara continued to live an ordinary school life, but now her classmates saw her not just as a princess, but as a strong and kind person. She stayed true to herself, and that loyalty led her to her true strength, which was not in her title, but in her ability to be kind, fair, and wise. Amara knew the new challenges lay ahead of her, but she was ready for them. For now she understood that a true princess is not one who wears a crown, but one who remains herself despite any challenges.